Here's a question. What if I told you that America's biggest creditors has quietly been pulling out of the US, out of their our debt? And most people have no idea what that means for their future. Now, China's been reducing its holdings of US Treasury bonds, the same bonds that literally fund our government. We've talked about that several times. And when someone holds your debt and starts selling it, that kind of changes everything. Now, China's been quietly reducing its holdings of the U.S. Treasury bonds. Uh, been doing it for probably about a year and a half now that we've noticed in large sums that they've been selling back, and that move could reshape this whole global financial system. Now, for decades, America's rallied on foreign buyers to fund that debt, and China is one of the biggest ones. But now the relationship is changing, dealing with BRICS, SWIFT, CHIP, a lot of other things that's going on right now. And that ripple effect hits interest rates, inflation, gold, and the future of the US dollar. So, in this episode tonight, we're going to break down a couple things: how the US debt system really works, why China became America's biggest creditor, why China is now selling US Treasury, the hidden role of Basel III in gold, which a lot of you probably have no idea what Basel III is, but we're going to jump into it, whether the dollar is losing its global dominance, and what it means for your money, your debt, and your future. This isn't fear bait. This isn't fear mongering. This is understanding the real power shifts that's happening quietly behind the scenes. So, this is what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, before we go into what's going on right now, probably need to touch back on a little bit of the history of this so that way you can kind of understand the whole thing of this. So, and we kind of want to hit on how China became the biggest holder of US treasuries in the first place. So, after China's trade boom back in the early 2000s, massive American imports meant that China accumulated dollars from exported profits. And to keep its currency competitive and resilient throughout these years, China began buying US Treasury bonds, essentially lending money back to the US government. And that helped in a couple ways. It absorbed the US dollar inflows, it kept the yuan from appreciating too fast, and it provided liquidation and safety for the reserves. The platform continued for years, and China's reserves basically soared after that. But China's holdings peaked around 2013 at about 1.32 trillion. But since then, it's gradually been reducing its U.S. Treasury bonds. And by late 25, the holdings fell down between 688 to 730 billion.
Damn.
Um,
And how many trillion was it originally? You said
it was 1.32
Right.
trillion.
Wow.
That was in 13. Now at the end of 25, it had dropped down to 688, between 688 to 730 billion. And it
Which is
hadn't been that
crazy
low.
because bonds are usually 10% per year, or what, 5%, 7% each year, or whatever. So for there to be any reduction is a big deal.
Right. And it hadn't been that low since right around 2008, 2009.